What is going on, cyberspace? I am MichaelK, and welcome to the first episode. I just realized that Zorain and I did not discuss this, but I guess we're calling it the MichaelCast, unless we decide that we're going to have a different name for this or something. So possibly MichaelCast pending other name. But yeah, anyway, I am joined across cyberspace through the interwebs and the inner tubes by my dear friend Zorain, whom you have already heard giggle over there across cyberspace land. How are you doing, Zorain?
I'm doing quite well, man. Giggling is a lot of what I'll probably be doing because that's how I be, as it were.
We do, in fact, giggle back and forth occasionally.
Yeah. That's kind of, isn't that kind of like the primary meaning of this endeavor? That's kind of what I feel like.
That's pretty accurate. I think that's pretty accurate. So,
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. So what the heck is going on? What are we doing here?
Isn't that that's the answer for life, or the question for life is like, what does it all mean?
So true. So personally, I feel like, we're creating all this musical video content and all this stuff like that. And it's hard to just, connect with people just on that alone. So you need some kind of more personable interaction with them, to kind of get to know them a little bit better. So that's kind of what this is. And we'll just kind of, discuss things that we like, video games, music, the intersection of those, video game music, all that kind of stuff. So
that seems good.
Yeah.
That seems good.
Today is just kind of like an introductory kind of situation. So we're just going to kind of go back and forth and see what kind of rabbit holes we find ourselves going down and call it a day. So
I'm sure the rabbit holes will be many in number.
They always are. See, this is what Zorain and I have always been discussing. So we've actually done several podcasts like in the past, and when we're not doing them, we're always saying, why are we not doing a podcast right now?
It's true.
Because we're just like going down all these rabbit holes constantly, repeatedly, over and over and over again. So, okay, let's see. Our musical journey. So where do we want to begin with that? That's a deep subject. We can kind of go into some independent stuff there before our paths crossed. And,
I was born at a young age. I make that joke all the time, and it's so corny, and it's like not even funny at this point, but I think it's hilarious.
I giggled. I appreciated it.
Yeah, we can start early. I feel like this is your show, so maybe you should start. I don't know, or I can go. You run the shots here, man. So you're going to have to let me know how you want this to go.
See, this is weird. This is very strange because Zorain has always been the podcast leader, and I've always just been playing off him. So it's strange being in the driver's seat here, but we're gonna make it happen. So, I guess. Let's just take turns going individually here then, and just kind of talk about that a little bit. So,
yeah,
I started taking piano lessons when I was about 4 years old. My mom made me do that. I hated it. I was never wild about piano. So as I got older, I was like in kind of like piano. You know how you're in like solo lessons, but you're in like a class of people that are all taking lessons. You all come together and do a recital and whatever. I didn't like that it was me and like 25 or 30 girls. It just that I wasn't wild about that kind of situation.
Fast forward 12 years later, you might have been okay.
Right,
with
exactly. That's what I've always told myself. It's like that was such an interesting observation as a child. But anyway, so I never really liked piano. Looking back on it, I wish I had kept up with it. I really, really wish I had kept up with it, but I didn't. So I took piano lessons for probably about 9 years or something like that. And I wound up switching to saxophone, tenor saxophone in the 8th grade, and joined the band because, I figured that was more of a, a community that I wanted to be involved in instead of, amidst a bunch of girls, basically. So yeah, picked up saxophone and started doing that. About a year later, picked up drums and guitar kind of about the same time. And then basically all throughout high school, I'm just like juggling all these different instruments and stuff. And yeah, I mean, beyond that, kind of started a couple bands here and there. And actually, one of those bands was how Zerain and I met. So let's rewind and you go, Zerain.
Okay. So I did not start music at such a young age. And I do regret that, but it's not like I had the option. So my family is not very musical in the sense they don't really play instruments. They don't, do that sort of thing, but they do like music. They have like bands they really like. They have songs they really like. They're not like just listening to music all the time. So they're not really music enthusiasts, but they certainly appreciate music. Yeah. And so, growing up, the only real brushes that I had with music with my family were one in church with hymns and things along that line, which I think that plays a real important part to something I'll talk about later. But the other is I really got into independently listening to music by listening to my mother's cassette tapes and vinyl records on a stereo that we had. Yeah, so she had like maybe 20 tapes and maybe 10 or so LPs, 10, 20, something like that. So it wasn't a lot of music. It wasn't like a huge collection, but it was interesting stuff. And so I would go through listening to it just to see what was there and just to listen. And most of it I really didn't like, because I mean it was stuff that like I appreciate more now than I appreciate then. For example, she had a Toto cassette. At the time, I just couldn't take that. I just did not like it. I was probably in middle school, maybe even elementary school at this point, like late elementary school. So like fourth grade or something like that. Maybe it was fifth grade. Maybe not even that late. Anyway, somewhere around there. And so I was going through all this stuff and I started really getting into some of the more rock type stuff. So like, John Cougar, which is John Cougar Mellencamp. She had a cassette from him. I liked a lot of that. I liked a lot of, there was some 38 Special. I liked some of that I didn't. So you think about like, kind of like rock, bordering on hard rock from like the 70s and early 80s. And that's kind of where I really got into stuff. And one of the biggest ones two ones that I really got into were Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz, which has Crazy Train on it, which is an amazing song. Yeah. And AC/DC, Highway to Hell. Okay. And so like lyrically, okay, we can talk about that separately, but like as far as the music and stuff, and I'll state this right now, I'm not an AC/DC fan. I don't really like AC/DC quite honestly at all. But at the time, I'd never heard anything like that, and it was very aggressive, and it was just like high energy, and that was the thing that was really capturing me. Yeah. Anyway, so get into a lot of interesting music that way, and then I start finding my way into more modern stuff, listening to some stuff on the radio, and then I was like, okay, well, I want to be in band. Like, so I knew that in sixth grade in the school I was in, we could start band. So I started playing alto saxophone in sixth grade. So I played alto sax, and I was starting to take piano lessons sometime around then. I don't remember exactly. But I only did that for like a year or two, and because I just never practiced. I mean, I could play okay, and I played some somewhat complex pieces for as little as I practiced. But I just didn't have the interest in practicing. I wanted to be able to just play. I didn't want to have to go through that learning phase, and that's a perennial problem of mine. So I played alto saxophone for like a year and a half in band, and then I was like, it was kind of boring to me because I was like almost literally always first chair. It was like, I didn't even have to practice and I'm like first chair. Yeah. And so it's like, for people who aren't in like band, at least the way it worked in the band I was in was like every week you had like a playing test. And so it was like either a song the band was working on or some exercises from books. And it was like everybody in a section had to play them. And like you got scored, and whoever had the highest score got first chair. And so basically, you're that instrument section leader or whatever. Yeah. And so it was just like not a challenge, and it was fine and it's fun, and I like playing saxophone. But I was like, I could do percussion. It was really interesting to me, percussion, because you got to play a bunch of different things, and that gets my need for novelty satiated.
Right.
And I had already had friends who were percussionists, and I had, like looked through the music, like tried to do some stuff, and it's like, I can do this. I know I can do this. So I became a percussionist and quickly started becoming the first chair in percussion all the time. That's cool. Mainly because I could play like timpani and keyboard instruments where most percussionists wouldn't touch, especially in middle school, wouldn't touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, dude. Just to inject for a second. So we had to do these tape things when I first joined band. So first of all, I started in the 8th grade when most people started in the 6th grade. So I was 2 years behind everybody else. Sure. So I had a lot of catching up to do. So I basically, when I jumped in, we had these tape things we had to do that were like 10 exercises a day. You'd have to record on a cassette tape. You playing these you had to record yourself counting them and then record yourself playing them. And it was like, ever so many of them were due like at the end of the week or whatever, but it came out to, if you did about like 9 or 10 a day, then you wouldn't have to, grind or whatever to get it all done.
Right.
So I was having to learn how to play while also doing those tapes.
Oh man.
But I was playing saxophone. The percussionists, they all wanted to play percussion, but obviously all the stuff they were playing was on like, keyboard percussion instruments.
Yeah.
So I just remember them being so mad about that.
That's the thing. Like, I think people start percussion or get into percussion and think, I want to play snare drum. Like from an orchestral setting or like a band setting. Or I want to play drum set if the band does any drum set stuff, or I want to play, stuff where I can hit things, basically,
right?
Where I can hit things hard, maybe I should say, because you hit mallet instruments and timpani. But like when it comes to like pitch, like most of the guys I was, and it was all guys in my percussion section, they just like, it was just so lost on them, and it's like one or two would really actually try, but then they just, it wasn't something, their brain just didn't port to that, it just didn't make sense to them. And this is so the first year that I was like fully in percussion, so this was my 8th grade year, I went and tried out so I'd only been in like not even a year, I think, in percussion, and I went and tried out for all region band.
Oh wow.
And I got first chair blue band. Dude. The first time. So
that's awesome.
Again, so it's percussion, right? Right. Even across schools, so few people did mallets, did timpani.
Yeah, here's the thing with that. So I played tenor saxophone, so I got wrecked whenever I went to stuff like that because there's like 1 or 2 tenor saxophones in every band. So, and they only
you got like jazzers who've been doing it since birth.
Exactly. So then it's like, I don't know, everybody like, it seemed like there were so many people that would try out for it, but they only took like 2. So
right.
Yeah, it was like,
it's like you literally power the horns, the
right.
I would say French horns, horn and F, whatever.
Yeah. So it's like literally the best 2 players in the state would get it. So
that's so terrible. And so like, but it was, this is just an aside. I have to say this story since we're on this part.
Yeah.
When I actually went and did the all region band, it was like, so they give me the whole music pack and like, here you go. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I didn't understand. They wanted me to assign out parts and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And I hadn't even been playing percussion for like a year.
That's
like,
awesome.
What the heck?
Wow.
I'm like, okay. And so it was like, I was real just kind of, I won't say democratic, but I was real just kind of, group oriented. It was like, who wants to play what? It's like everybody could play snare drum at some point, but we all got to play something,
Right. Wait, how old were you here?
Dude, this was 8th grade.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I can't even imagine doing that in 8th grade.
Anyway, that was an experience, and a good experience. I really enjoyed that. It was so much fun, and I almost want to name drop, but I won't. Remind me after this, and I'll talk to you about some people that we probably know in common. Deal. But the guy who was second chair, this is the last thing I'll say about this. The guy who was second chair in that band where I was first chair, we remembered each other. And then when I came back to college and I was doing marching pit in college, he was the guy instructing the pit basically. And it was like the first day we look at each other and we're like, do we know each other? And then it hit me where it was from. And then I brought it up. He's like, no way. It was like this really surreal sort of thing. And now that's his job. Like he's a percussionist. Like he's nice. I don't know if he's band teaching or not. You might know because you may know him more than I do, but, it was so weird that was just so surreal. It was one of the most interesting experiences of my life. All right, back to the history thing. So also around 7th grade, so this was when I was still doing saxophone before, or like maybe right around when I started changing to percussion. I got into guitar because like I got way into like Nirvana and like really like even more heavy stuff than just hard rock. And so I taught myself to play guitar, and I was really terrible at first, but I wanted to be able to do it so badly that I just was doing it all the time. And then that's how you just learn. You just do it all the time until you figure it out. And so then I got into a band with one of my neighbors and his brother, which I guess he's my neighbor too. And then we started playing. Like his brother was older and could drive, and I think he was like 18 or something at the time, maybe even older than that. We would play places like community festivals and play at churches and all kinds of different places, and that was a lot of fun. That really drove in me the desire to want to be in a band, to put out music, to even tour, which I never really did much in any real sense of touring. So I had that band, and I was always trying to write harder and more aggressive music, but this was more of like a kind of just regular rock band. And so eventually I left it to start my own band with some other friends from school, and we started a metalcore band. And so this was like 2000. So like this is like the right before metalcore was really starting to become a thing. So this was like, is this just like, what is this? It was kind of emergent. And we got pretty well known in the music scene around the city I was in, which is Memphis. I mean, I don't have to hide that. And we played a lot of shows with a lot of different bands and got to know several of the guys that put on shows, played at most of the venues that would have that kind of music. Met a lot of people, made a lot of friends. And one of the guys that I met happened to be the singer of the band that you were talking about that brought us together. Yes. But between that, I was in one other band, I think, two other bands, one that actually played a show, mostly just metalcore or progressive metalcore, I would say, stuff along the lines of like Between the Buried and Me. At the time, that was a band that was really influential. But maybe not so progressive, maybe slightly progressive. Anyway, and then finally to the band, the drummer in the band, the last band that I was in, he flaked out. And so that kind of fell apart. At that time's when our mutual contact, who was the singer in your band, I reached out to him, and he was like, "Oh, we're looking for another guitarist," or whatever it was. And
which you showed up like so we were just, you know, I don't know. My band history was much different from yours. So like I was never really in a band that like did a whole lot. Like, you know, we would get together and play music, and played a handful of shows, and that was it. Like one of my crowning achievements when I first started playing guitar was I was in a band with some friends of mine, and we played at the talent show at school. And because it was like an original composition that we played, we actually beat, again, I'm not going to name drop, but we actually beat a vocalist that like she was a very good, like actually pretty well-known vocalist, like in our school, kind of in the, like kind of getting out into the area and everything.
Yeah.
And it was like, heck yeah, bruh. Let's do this.
That's a good achievement.
Yeah. So that was really cool. That band eventually kind of fell apart, and then me and a couple other friends started up this band that you were talking about. And when you showed up, it melted our faces. Like literally, I didn't know like it was possible. Like that's the closest I'd ever been to someone that was just like shredding their very existence away. Like,
yeah.
And I know you're sitting there like, it's not that good. And it's like, well,
everything's relative, right?
Right. Yeah. We had never seen anything like that before. You were just much further down the road than we were at that point. That's
I had been going for quite a while at it because like ever since I picked up a guitar, I was like, the goal was to be in a band and play music in front of people. And like I said, that was like 7th grade. So at that point, that was what easily 8 years later, maybe 9.
Yeah.
So that had been quite a while of me seriously pursuing that, seriously relative to what other kids at those ages would have been doing, seriously pursuing that goal.
Yeah. Oh,
of course,
like, not only that as a player, but you came in, was like, oh yeah, I have a couple songs we can use too. And, just like, hey, let me teach you guys these songs. And then, we started playing your music like almost immediately. And then you're like, oh, by the way, I have all these power tabs I wrote of all these other 900 songs that I've written. And,
that's being charitable. Like it's more like, 12 measures, not a song.
Right. But again, to us, it was like, what's happening? This rock star's in our band. This is incredible.
Oh, good grief. I don't know about that.
And it was still to this day, bro, though, that one breakdown that you wrote that's like in 31, 32 or whatever the heck that is. Like, that's one of the coolest
things. For no good reason.
Right. That's one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
It's like, it's not really 31, 32. It's really 4/4, but you just rush a little bit.
That's great. I love that.
Oh, man.
So Zerain joined the band, and we were rocking out for a while.
Teaching the drummer how to drum.
I'm going to tell this story, and again, this is going to be. I'm not going to name drop the podcast. That's basically what this podcast is going to be. But
right, yeah.
So I don't think you were there at this point, but we had.
If it's a story I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure I wasn't.
Okay, we had this discussion prior to this day. Hey, we're going to kind of throw together like some recordings, and by recordings I mean freaking whatever jank technology we could put together to. I had this like, I don't even know what it was. It was like a little XLR mixer that just had a bunch of knobs on it, and you could turn up volume levels of the XLR channels, and that was it. And then it would give you like an XLR output. So I don't really know. It wasn't really a mixer. It was kind of like a leveler,
like a line mixer.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. So
interesting.
So yeah, we recorded with that, and we had this discussion that we were recording that day, and dude forgot his snare drum, so we freaking recorded with. He had a metal chair just between his legs, and he was just slapping the metal chair.
Lars called and wants his Saint Anger snare back.
Right. Sounded pretty metal though. It was pretty metal.
Literally.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, where were we going with that? So we played for a while. We didn't actually play any shows with you, right? I don't think we only played like one show.
When you're talking about that, it reminded me, the band that I was talking about where the drummer flaked out, that actually didn't happen before we got together in this band.
That's right.
That happened between this and the next band.
Yes.
Because that's why I left that band.
You left to play much better music. And and then
let's just say with a competent, no offense, but with a no, competent's not the right word, with a good drummer. He was a good drummer.
Yeah.
He just turns out being
one of those dudes that could just like effortlessly, do whatever,
I mean, put it this way. He was like, helicopter and double bass while doing vocals in the band. So.
Yeah. That's just, that's nuts. Yeah. So we kind of went off and did our own thing. And then eventually the band that I was in kind of fell apart, and Zerain came back to the band, and it evolved into this like power metal, fantasy metal situation.
Yeah. This is where the whole hymn thing comes back, because I think that's why like I have like such a or at the time at least had such a intuitions, maybe the word, for just like letting power metal chord progressions come out of me.
Yeah,
because it was like that. Really, that's what power metal is. It's like, think about it. If you take like a hymnal and like you open it up, and you go to a random hymn, and then you take that chord progression, and then you make and then like some really fast drums and stuff. That's like power metal.
Yeah,
to some degree.
That's great. But yeah, so when you came back, you actually played drums. And I didn't mention this. The metal chair drummer, he so basically he ended up quitting because we moved. So we were playing in this upper room at his dad's church. I don't know how we were able to do that, but we were. So that's what we were doing. Eventually, we moved to our new guitarist's garage, which was cool. It was a bigger space, the whole garage band feel and all that. But it's super loud in there with cymbals and all that junk going on and freaking guitar cabinets. Ugh. Anyway, so we had I don't know what it was, like these foam walls basically, and we put them up around him. Like we literally enclosed him in this and cut like a hole so somebody could walk up and be like, "Yo, bruh." In the little hole there. And
oh man.
Yeah, so he ended up quitting not long after that because we basically put him in a cage. So yeah, then Zerain came back and he was like, "Yo, we're gonna play power metal. I'm bringing my drum triggers and we're gonna all day long, bro." And so that's what we did. And you wrote a power metal album in like a night and a half or something.
It took like at least like 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay.
At least. But yeah, I was so I don't know when on the timeline, but at some point, I had really gotten into fantasy power metal. So like Rhapsody, their name at the time. So them, like even bands like Angra, some more lesser known bands like Celeste, which Celeste's album Reign of Elements to me is the pièce de résistance, or however you say that, of power metal, because it's so cheesy and it's so almost it's like it's straddling the line between self-aware and unself-aware.
Yeah.
Just right, so that it's like, are these guys serious? Are they not serious? I don't know. They're not, like, English isn't their native language, but the lyrics are in English, and there's like a little bit of voice acting that's clearly from somebody in English, from somebody who's not a native English speaker. It has like all of these really esoteric, weird little things that just make me love it to death. I love that album beginning to end so much. There's nothing wrong with that album. You can't improve that album, period. All of the rest of their albums I can't get into because that one's so good. If you like power metal, especially fantasy based power metal or fantasy themed power metal, Celeste, Reign of Elements, that album is something you need to listen to. It's worth the hour. It's totally worth it. Anyway, Have you listened to that whole album?
I have not listened to that whole album.
Brother, please.
Okay.
I think it's on Spotify now. You've got to. Noted. It's so good.
Noted.
But so I was like way into that kind of stuff, and I was like, and Dragon Force, of course. How could I forget?
Dragon Force was
like the big one.
Dragon Force and Rhapsody were kind of what I was listening to at that point, and I loved Dragon Force because I felt like dude could be like singing about making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it would just sound like the most metal and epic thing you ever heard in your life, you know?
Oh, exactly. That's totally right. And so. I was like, it's so we sat down. I was like, it's so easy to write this stuff, and like I did like a chord progression or something, or like a little riff, and then it ended up becoming a song. And then so yeah, I was like so excited that like I had an outlet for this, and I had people who were interested in trying to do this.
Yeah, because
that's not something that's easy to find, certainly in the area we were. So yeah, I was really excited, really energized by it. Sat down and wrote this album. Getting it recorded was a completely different story, but we should talk about that at another time. But
recording mishaps, that's a whole podcast,
right? So, but this was another recurrence, and I feel like I'm really taking over with the narrative here. But one thing I'll say, this was like the last time it's happened to me, but it happened so many times in my musical career that. No, there's no good drummer available and willing to sit down behind the kit and play drums for you for the kind of music you're trying to do.
Yep.
That you kind of have to just do it yourself. And so many of the bands that I've been in before, like ended up having to be the drummer because the drummer flaked out, left, or was no drummer, etc. And this was another one of those situations where I really wanted to be playing guitar, like really, really wanted to. But we didn't have a drummer. We even tried one guy from the local music scene. Great guy, great drummer. Would have been cool, and he was very interested. He loves that kind of music.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out, like schedule wise, and for a bunch of different reasons.
Oh, and
he already had another band too. So.
At this point, I was big. So basically, when I started playing drums, and by playing drums, I mean I got into marching band. So I was big into marching band land. I didn't really play drum set at this point yet. I could, one of those people who can just kind of sit down and play like a basic thing on a drum set. I could do that, right. But it wasn't really my thing yet at that point. So yeah, that's kind of how you stepped in doing that. I was in this mode where I was thinking, I want to play guitar. I want to be this ripping, roaring guitarist, I never was, but that's a different discussion.
Same.
So we, did all the power metal stuff. We played a show, right? One show.
We played more than a show. We played, at that event at the football field.
That's right. How silly of me. I just, I just archived that footage in the back of my mind just then.
Yeah. Well, that basically was just a practice in public. So
let's explain this very quickly. So, we actually in our prime, we had 3 guitarists in this band.
And one of them played keyboards a little bit.
Yeah, and one of the guitarists, he was a shredder. Like he literally.
He was real.
Yes, yeah. He was a shredder. But he had this hookup for us to play at this event at this kind of like sportsplex thing. Basically like a track, football field. That kind of situation. Oh, and so we had our guitar cabinets, had our drums set up out there, on the freaking track, and. Oh, I didn't mention the part about the vocalist. We'll back up to that in a second. But I was singing and playing guitar at this point, and I was singing over the literal PA of this sportsplex while we were all playing with our little baby cabinets and drum sets and stuff down there on the track. I can't even comprehend what this sounded like to the people that may have been, on the other side of the parking lot or something like that. Let alone like in the facility with us or whatever, but so the whole drummer thing, we couldn't find a vocalist to do this either. Power metal was a very demanding thing vocally and with drums too. Well, I mean with all instruments really, but yeah. So we tried a few people, and eventually. One day, I don't know. We were recording one of the songs, and you were just like, "Get in the closet and sing," or something like that. And I didn't even know how that conversation went down. I have no clue how I wound up in the closet that day with a microphone, but I did. and I remember, like, I recorded, laid down the tracks for that song, and then I opened the door, and I think it was just you and Bryce were there in the room.
Yeah, probably.
And you were just looking at me like, "He's the one." And I don't even think it was that good, but I guess it was just the delivery of it that was good or something.
It's so much better. One is a lot more than zero, right?
Right.
Having something was like amazing, but then it's like you cared about the music, right?
Yeah,
so you put that into your performance, and that matters too. Like that's a huge part of performing vocally. So
Definitely. And so that I prior to that, I kind of dabbled in singing. I kind of did some like little recordings, messing around on my own, and it wasn't really something that I really necessarily worked on or like learned how to do or whatever. One of those situations. So that's kind of how I got into singing, and then I actually from there started working on it and kind of learning and that whole thing. We played those 2 shows, and then beyond that, the band kind of fizzled out. People started going their separate ways. We kind of toyed with this idea of playing like video game metal. Basically, Power Glove, if you've ever heard, it's a video game metal band that's like basically power metal, but they play video game music. So we were kind of toying with the idea of doing that. The whole thing kind of fizzled out, and then Zorain and I kind of continued with that idea. And then from then on, it was pretty much just the 2 of us with, we got another singer. And at that point I switched to drums. It's like this whole weird thing. I don't even understand how all this switching around stuff happened. But, basically when we switched to video game metal, I switched to drums. Zorain switched back to guitar where he belonged. And then we got a vocalist. And so we were playing video game metal. So like video game, kind of like, they weren't medleys. They were, I don't even know how you describe what we did. We kind of took several different songs from video games and kind of meshed them up together. Not like a medley, but like a lot of stuff was like overlapping and on top of each other and, and that kind of thing. And then had like vocals and original lyrics and stuff on top of it.
So like the way that I think about it is, for anybody who's familiar with Creative Commons and the reason that Creative Commons exists, I'm not saying that applies here, but the idea behind Creative Commons is that if you have a piece of art or some sort of artistic expression, and that's able to be reused in a different art piece, whether that's physical art, visual art, music, whatever, you can really enrich culture by combining things like that and coming up with new outputs that you could not have had the other prior art had existed, and that the artists of those prior art allowed that art to be reused in that manner. That's about a real easy way to think about this is like hip hop and sampling, like back in the 80s when that really became a big thing. I mean, if nothing else, just think about the amen break, right? How many times have you heard that drum beat in any kind of music? Right. Hip hop, electronic music, even backported into rock music and stuff. And it's like that came from somebody taking a record with that drum break, meaning break in the song where it's just drums playing, and sampling it and then chopping it up and then replaying it in a bunch of different ways. And it's like you have drum and bass, a whole genre of subgenre of electronic music that is based around just messing around with the amen break, basically. And so there's so much creative culture that's come out of that, that it's a huge, important, and powerful thing. And so that, in my mind, is what we were doing with video game music, is we were taking these melodies and these parts of video game songs and combining them and creating this kind of original work, although it leaned heavily on the video game stuff. I make no bones about that. But the work that we did, the arranging and composing, and when I say composing, I mean composite, right? Literally composing, not just like music composing, although some of that too. And then the original lyrics and vocal lines on top of it created something unique that I don't think anybody else has really done. And if they have, I really hope people tell us, because I want to go see and support other people doing that, because I think that that's a really cool idea. I still to this day think that that's a really cool idea. Yeah. And I think we need to figure out how to continue with that in some manner, because I think that especially now more than ever, that's an idea whose time has come. I think we were ahead of the curve in some ways, because, you know, the popularity of video game music hadn't really risen like it has now with YouTubers like covering all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And then also the idea of remixing was really not thought of in that way, although it's starting to, because like this whole idea of a mashup, right? That starts this kind of thing that's more of a putting things together. And then when that starts to evolve, then that becomes like really creating new songs from old songs. And that's really what we were doing. To me, and it sounds like I'm patting ourselves on the back by saying it's innovative, but I felt that at the time it was innovative what we were doing. And I'm very proud of what we accomplished with that, because I go back and listen to that stuff and I'm very happy about what we did. I mean, sure, there's some technical things that could be better, but.
Right. I really think that's really all that was holding us back, was just the production. We didn't really, I mean, we kind of knew what we were doing, but we kind of didn't know what we were doing, and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I've heard people do that kind of thing where maybe they, mesh two songs together. And you think, oh, I never thought this song could kind of flow with this song. That's pretty cool.
Right.
But, again, not to pat ourselves on the back, but when you hear that happening with like 4 or 5 or 6 songs in one song, it's just kind of, it's pretty and a lot of it didn't really sound like it was, it didn't sound like it was 6 different songs happening, over time. Right. It just kind of flowed together. And we actually made like a cheat sheet that had like, this is this song at this time and this song at this time. And when you kind of look at that stuff, it's like, whoa.
And it's like, if you don't have that, it's like kind of a game to be like, okay, we'll figure out what all's in here. And it's like, if it's like some game that you really like, it's like, oh, I know that music. I know where that's from, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Unfortunately, again, we just didn't really know exactly what we were doing or how to really promote it. Honestly, we were kind of going about it, the old fashioned way, like we played at, comic conventions, anime conventions, that kind of stuff. But the people that were into it, they were really into it. So that was cool.
I mean, even to this day, we have, something like around 12 or 24 monthly listeners on Spotify with that music, which is not much, but I mean, for something that's literally not being promoted or pushed in any sort of way, that's pretty wild. Right. And it's like people all over the world listening to it. So it's like, blows my mind every time I think about that.
Right. I miss the convention life, but I don't. Yeah. I vividly remember this one convention here in Memphis that was like this escalator, going up in the middle of like whatever the giant hall or the main entry area, whatever the atrium, whatever you want to call it, something like that. This giant escalator, and I just remember like we were playing in the dead center of the building. And I had to haul my whole drum set into this place. And I just had this bass drum above my head going up this escalator like, here it is, guys. We're living the dream, making it happen, chasing it. So yeah. At some point I would like to get back to the convention thing, but
Yeah. I mean, one of the proud achievements of that band that I think is really cool is that, and somehow I booked this show, and I don't know how. In retrospect, I don't know how it happened. But we opened for Rainbow Dragon Eyes, which was awesome. That was in the smallest venue you can imagine in Memphis, and it was really cool. I found the other day, I don't know if I told you, the video I took of that show.
Oh, nice! No, you didn't.
I've been meaning to send it to him, and I haven't. I need to, but
that's awesome.
But yeah. So that was a lot of fun. That was cool.
Yeah, that was very cool. That was that was kind of when I started getting into LSDJ and that kind of stuff. I never, never got good at it, but or
I don't know that I would agree with that.
Fast at it, efficient at it. It's always been painful to me. I've always loved it. I've always craved. I want to write chip tunes on a freaking Game Boy, but it's just so slow for me. Just need to do it more. One of those things.
True.
Add it to the list.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually that band kind of, went sideways and just kind of dissipated and, and all that. And here Zerain and I, once again, trying to figure out what the heck we're going to do here.
Yeah.
And we decided to start this MichaelK channel thing here. And
you skipped one.
What did I skip? Oh,
come on.
Freaking unbelievable. Unbelievable. So we decided we were going to go into the streaming land, kind of think about this from a different perspective. And so we started a band called the CYBERPulse. And kind of the idea was it would be a band that would be doing, live music performances on Twitch before. I mean, that's kind of fairly common now, but I feel like, again, we were kind of ahead of the curve on this and, kind of trying to do something kind of out there. Especially considering that, Zerain, you and I are not co-located. We are separated by several hundreds of miles. So figuring out how to technically make that work was a whole different situation. So started that up. It turned into this whole thing where we kept on going down this rabbit hole of, okay, we're a band. Oh, wait, no, we're hackers from 100 years in the future and we're streaming back into the past and we have all these visors and it's this whole cyberpunk aesthetic and you're Zerain and I'm Riker and all this stuff. Wait, are we talking through time right now, Zerain? Or are we breaking the walls? Okay, we're talking through time right now. Zerain still exists.
2121, dog. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. I hope Riker is doing well with you there in those years, in those later times.
Yeah, he's all right.
Okay,
all right.
Excellent. That's
we're trying to hold. I'm not going to. I was going to start trying to do some lore dump or something, but it's
so. This is how these streams would always go. We would just start randomly going down all these rabbit holes and we were just. Imagine chugging about 7 or 8 Red Bulls, and just holding a microphone and just going at it. That was kind of the idea. But it had all this serious lore that we were delivering in a ridiculous way, basically. But also we were playing music. We basically played a lot of the video game music that we had written before, the video game metal stuff. And a few new covers, kind of experimented with some other things. We did some, drum streams where people would request songs and, we would play along with those songs. And, what else did we do? We did a co-drum stream where both of us were playing drums together to song requests. And then, man, what else I feel like we did so much. We tried many different things, like the game thing.
A couple streams where we were both playing different games at the same time, and we would switch which one we were focusing on based on what was going on in the games that we were playing, and we were just kind of talk and hang out during.
We did one where you were playing a game, and then I was playing drums to the music of that game. Just while that was exhausting. The whole time he was playing that game, I was just playing drums to the music on the game, which again, cool, but exhausting. That was probably the most exhausting of all the things we did.
That was that's pretty intense.
That was the whole thing.
So I mean, and I would love to bring some of that stuff back in some way or shape or form.
I totally agree with that.
There are people that connected with it that we're still connected to in some way or another, and it's it would be nice to keep those connections alive and keep the dream of that alive in some way. Mm-hmm.
So we say all this to say the CYBERPulse is not dead. It's just kind of there. It's just on a shelf. We gotta figure out what we're gonna do with it when we pull it back off the shelf. I guess that's why it didn't occur to me that it was just another step, was because I don't think it's dead. I think it's just just there. You know, it's still there.
Right.
So at some point we'll revisit that. I've always had this vision that it was just this giant, you know, production, that we had all this like video content, and we were weaving in like us playing music and all this stuff. And we had like, you know, lore in the form of like video stories and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, imagine like a Dr. Disrespect stream, but where like over half the stream is the stuff he does when he's not playing games.
Right.
Like, and it's like deeper lore and, you know, more production. You know, not to say that he doesn't do a lot. He does a whole lot for what his streams. Yeah. But you know, it's. I think he limits it because he still tries to maintain the focus as the gaming that he's doing mostly. Whereas my vision would be that it would be flipped. The other stuff would be kind of a little bit ancillary, but people are really coming for the lore, the story, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we love lore. We love overcomplicating very simple things. Yes. It seems like every band we've been in, we have it cannot be something basic. You know, there has to be that extra thing. You know, whatever that extra thing is. But there were a lot of extra things with the CyberPulse.
It's true. You could say the whole thing was an extra thing,
right? Stemming from, and like, you know, at first we were just like playing in my garage. You know, whenever Zerain would come into town, I'd spend like 2 hours setting up all this junk in the garage so we could stream from the garage, and then we'd spend another, you know, hour and a half or so tearing it all down. That was a whole situation.
That was rough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hot in garages. I don't know if you know about this CyberSpace, but garages get kind of tangy. So we kind of put the CyberPulse on pause and then switched to this MichaelK fiasco. So I mean, it has my name on it, but it is literally both of us. You know, even if Zerain is not in a video, he is working his tail off, you know, getting stuff done on the back end and making stuff happen and moving chess pieces around so that we are successful, and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, still a group situation. And I mean that, you know, my wife Anna does like all the filming, all the camera work, and all that stuff. So it looks like it's just me and my group of dudes that look like me. But I can assure you that there are several other people involved in everything that's going on. So yeah, I mean, you know, what is there to say about that? I mean, you know.
I mean, I think that the idea of what we're doing with MichaelK, this is my perspective on it at least, is that, you know, it's kind of got like an anchor or a flag planted with the vocal cover thing. But that's, to me, just one piece of the whole puzzle. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the biggest piece, maybe it's not. I don't know. I think time will tell about all that. But I think that obviously this podcast is a thing that we want to do regularly, if possible. And I think a lot of that's just trying to figure out what exactly we want to talk about. But I mean, it's probably just going to be another iteration, like you said, of all the million podcasts we've done in the past.
Right.
Which is, I think it's good because I think we have a pretty good dynamic with trying to talk about things. And I think that it helps bring new ideas to the surface. And that's helpful, if nothing else, for us. But I think it's also interesting to kind of see that process.
Yeah, definitely.
So that, I think bringing back the idea of some of the video game music, I think that's something that we both have a pretty big interest in. How that happens, don't know, but I mean, I'm sure we'll figure that out. I think the whole idea of doing things live at some point, if that becomes a possibility, I'm certainly not against that. Although it may be difficult in this day and age, but we'll see what happens.
Right.
But yeah, I think that it's kind of just like a base of nostalgia, let's say, around which we can do a bunch of different things. And that's interesting to me. And the things that I want to do that don't fit in with the MichaelK thing thematically, then that's the stuff that I plan on having for my own brand, band, whatever you want to call it.
You and your alter ego.
Right. Whatever that is pretty unclear to me at this point because we're so kind of laser focused on the MichaelK thing. But I think that's good because certainly I, for one, am very proud of what we've done to this point.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the mistakes that we've made in the past with specifically production stuff, I feel like we have definitely started to get all that stuff nailed down and it's no longer an issue. So I feel like we're able to finally communicate the stuff that we want to, we know how to use the tools that we need to use to be able to put the stuff out that we want to put out. So, so that's pretty cool. I'm excited about next year. We've talked a lot about different things that we're going to start kind of adding into the mix. That we definitely need to flesh out. Obviously, this podcast being one of them, and figuring out what the H this means and all that. But yeah, I think next year is going to be cool. I feel like we've a lot of the song covers that we've chosen have it's just kind of been a little bit of everything, and I feel like it's starting to kind of get narrowed down to what we think should be going on here. Kind of like the path that we feel like makes sense for everything that we're doing. And all that. So yeah, I'm excited, Zerain.
Me too, man. Me too.
Yes. So Zerain and I had a discussion prior to getting started with this podcast that we were going to aim for about 30 to 45 minutes. And I see 55 minutes here on this timer here. So we did an excellent job. Excellent job.
I'm not surprised at all that it's that. I'm surprised it's actually less than an hour, to be honest.
Right. So we're gonna start doing this weekly. That's gonna be the goal here. Start trying to get the podcast into the mix. Figuring out what we're gonna talk about is a different discussion, but.
All right. Yeah, we'll figure that one out pretty easy, I think.
Yeah. It'll happen. It'll happen, cyberspace. It'll happen. Well, is there anything else that you want to mention or you want to bring up, Zerain?
I mean, nothing specifically. If you think that I'm weird enough that you're interested in what I might be doing, I mean, you can check out my stuff on social media. It's all Zerain and everywhere that I am.
Lucky you. For some reason, there was another Mike Klodzinski on TikTok. Unbelievable. That's funny.
I have to tell the story of where that name Zerain came from at some point.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's not that interesting, but it's it's not that long, maybe I should say, but it's funny to me. That has been with me for so long. It's been a long, long time.
Right. We need to start a list of potential podcast discussions and topics and, all that kind of stuff. Idea. Add it to the folder where we have all of our lists, all of our song lists. We still have like freaking, video game metal potential songs that we were going to cover somewhere.
It's like 100 songs or something.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And little notes like, hey, this kind of sounds like this song. These two might go together, that kind of thing. So yeah, if you were interested in anything MichaelK that is going on, and this is your first time seeing our lovely, beautiful faces, you can go to MichaelK.net, and that will take you to the MichaelK YouTube channel with all the shenanigans there, and then we have the the social media things are a little bit more complicated, but. Up there,
you got a link tree, right?
Yeah. There's a link tree. What is it? MichaelK.net/links. Does that go to?
Does that go?
Did I dream that?
I don't know. I have.
We're doing it live, cyberspace. Yeah. We're doing it live.
It does work.
Heckin' yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, so MichaelK.net/links will give you a nice link tree with all of the things there on it. So, So yeah, thank you everybody so much for hanging out with us and listening to us ramble on about our musical journey and this strange path that we've been on. But very excited for this next year and where this path is going to take us.
Yes, it's going to be awesome, dude. I'm super pumped.
Yes. So, everybody out there in cyberspace land, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. Peace.